the other day, one of my friends asked me, how do you write a novel? And there's not really a definitive answer because everyone does it differently, and every way that you do it is acceptable. There's no wrong way to write a novel. You normally fall into two categories though. So you have the discovery writer, so someone who writes as they go with no real plan, and then the planners who plan out every single chapter and everything that goes into that chapter. But I would say that I'm a discovery writer, but I have a loose plan because for me, I need to know where a book is going before I start it, because otherwise I'm just going to go all over the place and it's just going to be a complete mess. So that's like the two main ways that you write. So what advice would I give on writing a novel? Have a full idea. That sounds strange, but often I'll have an idea and I'll jot it down, but I'll think that's not a book. So some ideas take a long time to develop to become the whole that you need to write it, because if you start without a complete idea, you're not really going to get anywhere. So you're going to start a novel and be like, oh, there's nothing here. But that idea can start simply with a character. I mean, it doesn't have to start with a whole world that you've built in your mind. It can simply start with a character who you're like, oh, that person's interesting. I want to explore more what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then when it comes to characters, I think a good thing to do is to, when you write, so I write my characters. So how do I put this? So my first drafts are always incredibly heavy on dialogue, because of the way that I write. Because I'm a discovery writer, I allow my characters to drive the story. So that's why there's so much conversation, because I'm allowing them to work out a situation. And so for me, I find that characters are very important. Other people do it differently, of course, but this is the way that I do it. So if you want to develop good characters, I think just write scenes of them having conversations, and that way you'll find their own unique voices. And I think when you're able to do that, you develop a much richer person. Characters aren't just about little quirks, it's about who they are fundamentally, the decisions that they're going to make. So every character in a certain situation, say they're locked in a cell, every single character is going to react differently because that's who they are fundamentally. Some people are going to completely fall apart, some people are going to try and escape, some people will philosophize about it. So you have to know who your character is fundamentally. It's not just the fact that they bite their bottom lip, that's not really who they are as a person. And I find personally that writing that dialogue really helps you open up. And another thing you can do, which I've had people advise before, is to write a diary. So just write their diary entries and stuff, which can be really useful. I personally don't really do it, but I have tried it before, and it is helpful. So that's one way of developing characters. World building, I'm not great at world building. It's something that I need to work on, particularly seeing as I have an epic fantasy series planned. And part of the reason I'm not great on world building is because I don't write very descriptively because of the way that I write characters. So because it's character driven, you lose description. But when it comes to world building, I think you just have to really do some planning. Yeah, you're going to have to plan, and I'm going to have to plan when I do it, because you need to understand basic things like climate, political structure, medicines. The more you put into a world, the more you're going to get out of it. But the important thing when you're doing world building is not to tell people everything about this world. Don't be like, well, this is the political system, and this is the medicines that they use, and this is the climate, and this is the language. You have to show them, you have to take them into that world. And there is a huge difference in writing between showing and telling. And I mean, when I get my draft back from my editor, I'm sure there's going to be times when I've told the reader what something is instead of showing them. And it really makes a book if you can immerse someone in that world, because that's what's going to really bring it to life, is not by telling them, it's by showing them. And I'm trying to think of the best way to do an example of it. So I think one of the best ways of showing it is, say there's a lot of poverty in the world you're building. Don't be like, there's so many poor people. You take one of your characters through the streets and you describe the smells and the boarded up shops and the amount of people begging and the fact that, you know, the food on the stalls is rotting. Things like that kind of show you that things aren't right in this world, that something's gone wrong. And already you can feel that atmosphere that, oh God, this place doesn't seem that great, I wonder what's happening, instead of being told this is what's happening. I'm trying to, I hope that makes it clear what I mean by show and tell. So that's one thing to do when you're doing world building. What else do you need to do? Structure. So structure is really important in a book because it's all to do with pacing. I personally like a fast-paced book, and I write very, very fast-paced. So essentially what happens is that it's event after event after event after event. So you are racing to the end of the book, and it's actually something quite good to do if you are a self-published author, because pacing sells better, which kind of sucks if you want to write beautiful prose, but it does help sell your book. And that's all to do with beats. So you'll hear this a lot in screenwriting as well. You have beats. So it's about keeping a consistent pace, and you want to have something dramatic but then bring it down a little bit, and then you want to keep things flowing, keep things moving, constantly put little obstacles in the way for your characters to have to overcome to keep it interesting, and that way you'll find that it reads fluidly. I think pacing is something that an editor picks up on really well. My editor picks up on it really well. But you'll be surprised how structure really affects your book. And another thing is the language you use, just keep it simple. Don't stress yourself out with writing the perfect sentence, adding in amazing metaphors and similes, because a lot of the time it can come across as false, because you're forcing it. Keep it simple. Keep your sentences short, and you know, later on when you're doing an edit, fine, you know, go back, embellish, draw things out, you know, make it a bit more purple prosy, but I would recommend you keep it simple when you're doing the first drafts. Just get the idea down, get the story down. I think that's what people forget when they're writing, is that actually don't think of it as I'm writing a novel. Think of it as I'm telling a story. You're taking people on a journey, you're giving people a glimpse into the lives of these characters that you've created, and you just want to tell them their story. And what's the best way to tell a story? Immerse someone in it. Keep it simple, keep it clear. And I think if you have that in mind when you're writing, that you're writing a story, and you don't worry about who you're writing the story for, you just write that story for yourself, then that takes away some of the fear. And I think you'll be surprised how easy it is for you to get it down on paper. Obviously there's, you know, other sides of things like motivation, which I can talk about another time, but essentially just write the story. Don't get bogged down in detail, just write that story. So yeah, it's really difficult because there isn't a hard and fast rule on how to write a novel. Yes, there are courses you can do, and I'm sure they're incredibly useful, but a lot of writing comes down to just writing and writing and writing. I've been writing for years, and the first book I wrote was crap, and first full-length novel, and actually I just scrapped it completely because the idea was good, and I started rewriting it last year, and I've completely rewritten it. So for me, that's because I wasn't experienced enough when I started writing it. Yeah, God, 7 years ago, I think it was. I just didn't have that experience as a writer to get the story the way I wanted it, the way I saw it in my head. And so it took me writing for that long to finally find the voice that was appropriate to tell the story. So just keep writing, just keep going, and you'll find your own rhythm, you'll find your own pattern, and you will get there in the end. But if you have any issues, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, because I will do my best. I mean, I don't in any way consider myself an expert. I just consider myself someone who has experienced this. And so hopefully I'll be able to guide you in any way I can.